Brattleboro DRB. This is August 21st, 2009. Just get my little sheet with minutes here. At every meeting, I give the same opening remarks that outline generally how this all works. Some of you hear this a lot, but if you've never been here, it is important for you to listen now so you understand what we're about to do. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrator decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. What that means is that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants and members of the public should be aware that because we're on the record, this is your only opportunity to comment on and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event our decision is appealed to the environmental court, the court will not take or consider new testimony or evidence at its hearing. Instead, it will look at the evidence from our hearing, the regulation or applicable law, and determine if the evidence supported our findings. Only interested people that participate in this proceeding can appeal a decision by this board. So I strongly encourage anyone here who's interested to speak up. Because we're on the record, I'm going to ask you that if there is even the slightest modicum of a chance that you're going to speak, that I swear you in now, because any testimony we take has to be sworn in under oath. So if you think there's a chance you're going to speak, I'm just going to ask you to raise your right hand and I'm going to swear you in as a group. Do you hereby swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give in the cause under consideration will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Yes.
Okay. If you weren't sworn and you later change your mind, you have to tell me so I can swear you in. Otherwise, your testimony cannot be considered by us and can't be considered by the environmental court if you want to appeal our decision. Applications require a majority vote of the full board to succeed. That means 4 votes out of 7. We have a full board tonight, so we don't have to have the next little talk. After taking testimony, the board will close the public hearing and may vote on your application. The board will issue a written decision within 45 days of the close of the hearing. While we may vote on an application at our meeting, it's the written decision that controls the timeline for appeal. It should be noted that the town of Brattleboro is a party with an interest in land development applications. The town of Brattleboro has no special status before this board. Documents provided to our board by the town planning department, town attorney, or any other town employee are considered in the exact same way and we record them the same weight as any information from the applicant or any interested parties. The first item of business is to approve the minutes of our July 17th, 2019 meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Mr. Bannon, has our meeting been properly warned?
Yes, it has.
Are there any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to be disclosed tonight?
We've got the Serenity Smith and William Fortune. Is that on our agenda?
That's on the agenda?
I did some video work for NECA a number of years back. So in a sense, I was employed or contracted directly by Serenity or NECA. So I could recuse myself. I haven't done video work for them for 4 or 5 years. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Do you feel it creates a situation where you couldn't fairly vote on the application as if it was just some person you didn't know?
I could recuse. I could just listen and not participate in the voting.
I'm not suggesting you should, but if you don't think you can be fair, you should recuse. If you feel it makes no difference, you should vote.
I don't know. There's a possibility I could be hired again in the future, so I wouldn't want the appearance.
Fine, sure.
Okay.
I suppose I should note that I represented a group of employees of NECA in a manner that tangentially involved Ms. Smith. I don't view that as a conflict. And I see a couple of people in the audience who, if they participate in interested parties, may create conflicts for me, but I'm just going to wait to find out about how that shakes out. Any other conflicts of interest or ex parte communications?
All I could say is
NECA rents from my employers, that's all I could say, but I don't have any conflict.
Do you think you can treat
Yeah,
them just
yeah.
as you would somebody else? Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's fine. I don't know how many people here are using the agenda that was promulgated, but we are changing the order. We're doing so because we have some folks who came from very far away, and we're trying to accommodate them. And then there's been an application withdrawn that we want to deal with. We're attempting to be as efficient as we can and look out for some of the folks that have come from a long way. And we see that there are a lot of people here tonight. We're going to try to do our business as quickly as possible, but also make sure you all have a chance to say your piece. So the first application is 2019-108. That's Douglas Beachel for Carol's Restaurant Group for SMS Page LLC. So if you could come up to the table, well, if you're putting something up, if you can put it up here so that the camera that's doing public access can capture it. You can just pull another seat up there and make yourself comfortable. You sure?
Yeah.
All right. So if you folks can just say who you are respectively, and then tell us a little bit about the project, please.
Okay, I'm Doug Beachel. I'm a real estate manager with Carol's Restaurant Group. We're based in Syracuse, New York.
My name is Robert Blood. I'm a project architect from Lauer, Manguso and Associates outside of Buffalo.
And I'm Bob Story. I'm with Carroll's Corporation, construction manager for Carroll's Corporation.
Okay, so the project in a whole is we're a Burger King franchisee. We've been in business for over 50 years under really Carroll's Restaurants originally.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
I have a conflict of interest in this application, and I just forgot to mention it. I'm sorry, I didn't give you any heads up, but can you conduct this hearing?
Sure.
All right, Shotgun. I apologize, but you just keep right on going.
Okay. We are proposing to reopen the closed Burger King at 548 Canal Street under a BK Burger King again. So we propose to do a full remodel and then really upgrade the parking lot into current code and several other improvements to the site. Bob Blood, our project architect, can go into detail on the site plan and the building. But in a nutshell, we're just planning to reopen it as a Burger King.
So as Doug mentioned, the building will sit in the same location it exists now. There's a exterior cooler on the current footprint that we removed and moved inside. And then the building will receive full facade restoration current with current Burger King prototypes. As Doug mentioned as well, the parking lot will be upgraded in an attempt to bring the compliance with the green space, shade tree requirements. The dumpster area behind the restaurant now will be cleaned up and organized a little bit better with a masonry trash enclosure and some new sidewalks. New drive-through structures along the back. Drive-through lane stays the same.
The drive-through lane will be a new drive-through lane put in.
Right, but in the same
Right, in the same
location,
location.
same orientation. Plans do say this existing fence along the road property line will remain, it's going to remain, but it will be a new fence in the same location. Right. And then I guess the biggest change is currently there's a couple of handicap spots in front of the restaurant that are not compliant the way they currently are laid out. Carol's likes to include this crossover lane in front of the restaurant whenever possible, because it's a safety and convenience factor for their customers. instead of somebody having to make a quick turn back on 45 to cut back into the restaurant for whatever reason, or to enter the main parking area, that's a new addition to the plan as well, along with new side lighting and landscaping, wherever we can put it. We've read, I was provided some of your comments, so I know there are some concerns with the landscaping, maybe some of the parking areas as well. So any other questions or comments, we'd all be here to address them for you. All the existing storm infrastructure remains, the site utilities remain. There is a grease interceptor along the back here. We could have that investigated if there's some concerns about that possibly needing replacement. There is a new accessible route entrance from the Route 5 right away to the front of the restaurant. That would cross that bypass lane with the new sidewalk there. I understand there were some comments about possibly redoing the curb cuts and perhaps the sidewalks out front. I think these guys would consider those recommendations. And the elevations, let's talk about a light band across the front that would be red and internally illuminated. Pass those along. It's not a, that's more of a glowing light than any sort of thing that would show up in photometrics, but
Which one are you referring to?
we're talking about the light band along the top of the restaurant. Which goes pretty much all the way around.
Oh, I see. The red?
The red is a internally illuminated band.
So that's
It's a red, so it's
No,
like
it's
a
on there
red
now.
translucent?
It's on there now?
It's on the store now,
Okay.
but we'll be changing it to LEDs instead of fluorescents.
So there was a comment also about the home of the Wobbler lettering, which occurs on the main entrance side above the canopy. That is internally illuminated, but we can change that so that it's lit from the exterior instead. I think that's most of the comments that I read. There's some particulars on landscaping and screening and things like that. Be happy to address.
Brian, do you mind if I ask Brian a question?
No, go ahead.
How does the, I guess essentially they're utilizing the existing entrance to the parking lot. Is that conform with our zoning requirements? I mean, is there any, I'm trying to think of a similar space, you know what I mean? Where is it clear that, let's use an example of a municipal parking lot. I mean, it's clearly marked Preston lot, which to enter, but you often see people. I'm just concerned about that, the entrance of the parking lot. How will it be determined or marked? You know, cars should be coming in. I'm presuming if you're looking at the property, cars should be coming in on the right, exiting out on the left.
Right. Well, I think currently you've just got this wide open space
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
two very narrow curb cuts.
Okay.
And what we tried to do is, we're implementing this new landscape median that provides a direction around to the right.
Okay.
And then exiting, and then there will also be signage to guide visitors.
So
located there.
the idea is that the flow is, when you enter, you're only supposed to go to the right.
Yes.
When you enter, you should be, yes, only to the right.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have any representations of the signage that
Yeah.
that's proposed on this.
There's a monument sign, like.
Okay.
At the very
Did we
end.
just pass over it?
No, no.
Oh, we haven't.
Side page.
It's just a,
Okay, I think I was thinking of more
Directional
simple,
signs.
enter and then exit.
well, that would be similar to this.
Okay,
The directionals with the logo.
yeah,
And then probably at the entrance, drive through to the
There
right.
there should be one on each side of that. There should be one at that entrance where it's with an arrow pointing to the right,
Okay,
saying entrance or drive-through that way.
okay.
So people enter from the right, and then they can either park, or they continue around
The
to
drive-through.
the drives.
Essentially the same circulation that exists now, hopefully with a little bit more definition.
I had a couple questions about, I guess, in thinking of that, obviously handicap parking is designed so that the person that parks there has less to travel. I guess, just trying to figure somebody who has, let's say, a handicap sticker and they turn into the lot, I mean, will they know they have to sort of do this loop to get to the handicap parking? I guess this question is directed to Brian. The two handicap spaces are what conform? Is that-
There's only 47 spaces.
Okay,
You need one for every 25.
okay.
Am I right, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess my other question was the location of the bike rack. And again, it's just the concern, of people's innate desires to get right to where they want to go. But I'm imagining the proper way a person would visit the facility on a bike would be to walk the bike here over there to the bike rack. And I didn't know if there was any consideration or if it made any sense, or just to bring up the thought of, does it make sense to think about a bike rack either here or even have the bike rack perhaps be closer to that? I think what I'm trying to say is I feel like most of your customers, when they first approach the building, are oriented at the building this way. And I'm just,
There is a door, there is a door going into the building.
so that is if you enter.
That's the front door.
Okay.
And then if you're in a parking lot, you've got what we refer to as the main entrance on this parking lot.
I have to remind you that in Vermont, a lot of Vermonters never seem to use the front door. For their own house, they use the side door. So. But what you're telling me is that if somebody approaches the facility on a bike,
They go up from here.
the bike rack's right there, and then they go right in there.
Yes.
So-called
But
front door.
if it would be more desirable to have it right out by the street,
I'm bringing it up. I mean, again, I don't, this seems well thought out. I noticed things like the bike rack or, my concern would be if somebody's on their bike and thinks they could cut for, that's an unsafe situation. If somebody cuts in with their bike. And so the location of the bike rack, would it be better in a slightly different location? But I don't know if any of my fellow board members think.
I think they probably cut across no matter where you put the bike rack, unfortunately. They're not gonna drive, they're not gonna.
And there's obviously representation of the signage at the end of, I remember using that drive-through myself when the Burger King was open. But is there representation of the signage that says, like, do not enter, do you hear? I'm
What
just-
you're saying, this guy?
I'm just curious about the signage at the end of the drive-through.
it would be the same directional type signage.
Okay.
I think the only departure from that would be where we would have a do not enter and a crosswalk sign.
There as
in the
well.
front.
Okay. What I mean to say is from Canal Street.
There's a sign right here.
Okay.
There's a sign right there that says do not enter.
Do not enter.
Yeah,
Exit.
so-
Okay. Of that existing exit-only directional sign to be replaced. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think changing the location of the bike racks. Bike rack is gonna keep people on a bike from coming in the entrance and cutting across.
I know. Technically, a person on a bike should not be traveling along the sidewalk. Technically.
Well,
Technically.
technically.
Technically. Since we're broadcast over public access television, I find it really annoying in the town of Brattleboro that the sidewalk is for walking. It's not for bikes. I'll just get that in there.
questions from the board? Comments?
What was the email that we got from somebody asking about the grease
That's from,
interceptor?
Dan from Public Works.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Dan Tyler. He was I think you got it?
Yes.
The curb cuts and the sidewalks. Sidewalk are in poor condition. And are you planning to update the curb cuts?
Isn't that state property?
Or at least a work permit from the state would be required to manipulate those? I don't recall where the state highway starts and the town
See,
highway.
if the state wants, if it's a state permit needed, well, I don't know how, but it's gonna take some time to get it. We would like to get this thing open.
Yeah.
It appears as though the
Thanksgiving.
boundary is right on the edge of the sidewalk itself, very close to it. So we've left that as is, so
But
they're
if-
not,
The boundary,
Infringing
what,
on
the
state,
state right away?
right,
And so that the sidewalk is included within the right of way, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay. And usually they require some sort of a permit to work within the state right of way.
It'll take
Yeah.
6 months to get close to 3 to 6 months to get a permit to do it. I mean, if it's an issue, we can probably do it in the spring, do it and get all the work, get all the rest of the work done, get it open in the spring. When we get the permit, we can come back in and put that sidewalk.
I mean, it would certainly be a nice thing to.
Yes, it would. It would look nice.
I mean, it would help your curb appeal, and it would make it safer for people coming and going.
Definitely would.
So,
And like I said, we could file for a permit, but I wouldn't wanna have to wait for that permit before I should start this, because it'll be a 6-month period or better before we do it. We'd rather get the store done, get it open, come back in the spring when we get the permit and put it in.
So ultimately, we would be amenable to applying for that permit and doing the work. We'd like it to be somewhat conditional on if we can get up and going and running, and then just getting doing the work when the time comes when the permit is issued. It's really a separate permit from the rest of it, so, if it's some condition, if we can, depending on the municipality, sometimes we'll allow to operate under a conditional CFO up until we have our final work done. That could be a condition that is out there that would hold us to doing it versus us just saying, yes, we're going to do it at this meeting.
Mario, you can approve a state construction plan, so it would be phased, and each of the phases would have its own certificate of compliance, so there won't be a holdup.
Just making a note.
And then the grease interceptor, what we'll do is fully inspect it,
Yes.
pump it out, inspect it. Bob can speak more to that.
Yeah, we will go in, as soon as we get started, we'll go in and clean that grease trap out, pump it out, the people who take care of the grease come in and clean it, pump it out, and then we can get
now, is that
Dan or whoever.
that grease interceptor, is that at parking lot grease interceptor, or is that
No,
grease
no, no,
interceptor
it's
for the
grease
store?
For the store,
For the,
for the grease in the
Yep,
store,
yep,
the
yep.
grease lines.
Ultimately, it connects to the sanitary line.
no,
Mhm.
that's prudent, but that's located outside the.
It's outside in the drive-through lane.
Yep,
And so Dan Tyler would be the person to talk to, and also about the water allocation,
He also
when the water
mentioned,
gets done.
I think there was something also mentioned about the sewer lines inside the building.
Yeah, I think he mentioned there's concern
Yeah,
about
well,
erosion.
Well, if you see the building from plans, it's all new sewer system, or all new drains in the building.
Okay.
All the old drains will not be used, there'll be new drains in there, new bathrooms are being moved forward, totally new sanitary lines, and new grease lines inside the building.
so it would just come down to fencing that, the grease interceptor itself is, would you want that, would want to
We
make
would
sure
have
that
to make
that-
sure it's right, so we
Yeah.
can dump into that and not put grease out into the sewer lines.
Yeah,
Yes.
that it works.
Yeah, we'll fully inspect it. and
It'll be
should
inspected,
it be
we'll
re-
make sure
need to
Dan
be-
gets over there to look at it, to make sure it's, that he's the person. We'll have him over there to look at it, to make sure that
Mhm.
there is no problem with that grease trap.
I think the only other big comment is the landscaping. And, whether we have enough, landscaping in the, around the building. So it's front yard landscaping. The building landscaping falls short. So you're doing plantings around the building itself? Is
Yes,
that correct?
what I've factored in as far as the building landscaping would be this area in front, along the foundation, and then the back corner, and then at the beginning of the drive-through entrance. Then this would be considered the streetscape,
The
parking
streetscape,
area,
right.
so that is where the limits of the building landscape are. There's not a lot of opportunities unless we do something different as far as walkways adjacent to it, but I still don't think even if we got foundation planning along the entire perimeter, we would still be able to meet the
The
Where
47,
units.
yeah.
47.
The building plantings are supposed to be for the facades that are actually visible from the public way, so that would really only be the short and long facade. So it's really half of what that total would be.
Is
So
the,
it comes close.
Closer.
It's densely planted, it's hard to see how they could have it, otherwise the plants themselves
Yeah.
would become overcrowded.
Right.
is it, is the adjacent property on Canal Street just south of this? Is that the Cumberland Farms?
It's a
gas?
gas station.
Urban.
Urban gas
Oh, it's an
station.
Irving?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a change in zoning areas between those two properties?
No.
Are gas stations exempt from putting any sort of plant material?
It's grandfathered.
That was grandfather, yeah. Okay, because I swear to God, I don't think I've seen anything green at that particular. I just wanted to get clear, so that's because it's grandfather. These, the zoning requirements they're trying to meet are newer than when that,
Because, yes, because
Okay.
they're remodeling,
All right,
because
just-
they're remodeling.
okay, just wanted to understand that. You could offer them a tree.
I like the additional trees, you know, kind of stand in for the other landscaping that they can't do.
Yeah, that's fine. Is anybody in the public here to speak to this project? Anybody have any comments? Anybody want to say anything? Yes. You can go to the mic, please, and say your name.
I'm Jackie Reese, and I'm from District 3, if that matters in this meeting. I'm just kind of curious, what kind of a restaurant it's going to be? If I missed something, I apologize.
It's a Burger King,
It's going to be another Burger King?
yes.
No, it's fine, because when I got the agenda, I didn't know it was a Burger King until I opened up the plan. And there was home of the Whopper, and I said, I kind of think it might be a Burger King. So if you can see the plans, it would clear all the confusion.
Yeah, hi, Bob Tortolani from Brattleboro. Just curious as to the hours of operation.
Usually they start about 6 in the morning, and about, the dining room will usually closes at between 9 and 10, and then they'll keep the drive-through open until midnight,
Okay,
around midnight or so.
thank you.
Any other comments from, any other comments from the board? So we've added the condition that they will apply for a state permit for the sidewalk work. But we will approve the rest of the construction going forward.
Is that sidewalk only, or was that sidewalk and curbing?
Sidewalk and curb cuts.
Okay.
Curb cuts are actually gonna be done during the regular remodel, because we come right up to the sidewalks.
Okay.
And we'll put curbs in all the way up to the sidewalks in there.
Okay, so it's just a
So
sidewalk.
Basically, it's just a sidewalk
Okay.
that'll be done there.
Is there a motion?
Yes. I suggest we approve.
With
I would make a motion with the amendment, that
the
we,
additional,
yep,
the additional.
conditions.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it's 6-1.
No, it's
No.
actually
6 to
5-1.
5-1. Oh, that's right.
James is recused.
James
I'm
is
abstaining
recused.
from everyone.
James is abstained,
I'm out.
recused. Okay, so you got 5 votes, and you're good to go.
All right, thank you very much.
6 votes. For 7 votes.
Appreciate the accommodation on the agenda.
No,
Sure.
Kathleen voted no. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I did.
Okay, so, I'm back as chair until my next unexpected conflict. The next application on the list was 2019-75, which was an application by the town of Brattleboro related to, an addition to the ice skating rink. We received notice from the town of Brattleboro that they wish to withdraw this application. So if you hear about the ice rink application, it's been withdrawn. I'd entertain a motion to dismiss it without prejudice.
So moved.
Second?
Second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. The next application is 2019-92. Is it John or Jan?
Yeah.
Bill Jan for Brattleboro Outing Club and Advanced Technologies Management. Mr. Jan, you saw them do their presentation. If you could just introduce yourselves and follow them in kind, please.
I'm Bill Jan, and I'm representing the Brattleboro Outing Club. This is Melanie Bowes, the owner of the Brattleboro Country Club. And the Country Club in Brattleboro has generously, for decades, provided an opportunity for the Brattleboro Outing Club to utilize the golf course to groom cross-country ski trails on the course property. And over the course of that time, the outing club has used volunteers to move in ski equipment, snowshoes, boots, skis and poles. And we used sometimes storage sheds at the golf course, sometimes the golf pro shop. In recent years, it's been the golf pro shop, and generously, the country club has moved all their golf paraphernalia and apparel and apparatus out and allowed us to move our stuff in. There were some renovations that made it more desirable for us not to use that space. And so the outing club has started to investigate ways of having some little storage area, ski hut type building. The construction trades program at the Career Center had a building that they generously sold to us. And we're eager to be able to move that on some property that Melanie has allowed us to put that building on, which is the far south upper end of the parking lot. And it's a temporary building, where one of which could be moved if you needed to move it. There'll be no plumbing. And it's really primarily for 9 months out of the year, a place for storage, and 3 months, a place that will have equipment being used by school programs. The winter programs at the elementary schools use the trails, the high school ski team uses those. And so we're trying to go through the process to have a space that we can utilize. Without that, those programs won't exist.
Can you just tell us about how it's going to be lit? You can sit, by the way. I mean, we've got a lot of standing applicants tonight, so that's a new thing. Generally, people sit.
Okay. At the moment, the lighting is, there are a lot of windows in this building. They're double paned and it's really well insulated. And because it's only used from 10 o'clock, the earliest, till 4, there's not a real lot of lighting. And if we ran into running electricity, it would probably be through generators. At least that's the current thinking.
Did I misunderstand that there are 2 outside fixtures?
I think that's what it said.
There are 2, the fixtures aren't there, but the space for fixtures are.
Okay. Okay. But that's not actually going to be light that turns on under the proposal here.
No, because at night, there'll be nobody there.
Okay. Well, that resolves that.
Can you tell us how it's gonna be secured? Like who has keys and
Well,
all that?
the BOC's a volunteer organization. People who would have keys would be the BOC's cross-country ski committee, or someone that is hired to coordinate the volunteers. So I would guess there's the potential for about 6 to 7 people having keys.
I was looking at the picture that this I take it is the little square right here.
Yes.
Okay. How would the equipment be picked up and left off? I mean, is there gonna be a lot of traffic going back and forth to there when that happens? Or are you gonna have particular little carts or something?
There's a parking lot.
Excuse me, can you shut the door?
Thank you.
There's a lower parking lot that will be plowed where people will park. And at the end of that parking lot, if people have their own skis, they would just enter the trailhead from there.
Okay.
The school groups which use our equipment, they come in a bus.
Okay.
And the bus drops them off. And Linda Bailey runs those school programs, and I'm not always sure, the bus stays with them. It drops them off and then comes back and picks them up. Some schools come in with parent volunteer cars, but there's ample parking.
So it's actually foot traffic that goes there then to pick up the equipment and then use it right away?
It's foot traffic that
Oh,
gets
okay.
into the building, yes.
Okay.
So there won't be utility connection to it, power?
Power, the expense of having Green Mountain Power run things to it is way beyond our budget. And so, heat there will be. And
Heat, okay, because I see in here you have a propane heater,
that's the plan, to put propane in.
but that would be one that didn't have a blower on it, was just
No.
self-contained.
That's right.
Do we have any, I don't suppose it's our purview to, the building itself is not, it's pre-made, it's already existing.
It already
Okay.
exists.
And so it's gonna be brought to the site presumably on the back of a truck, presumably.
Some kind of trailer, yeah.
Yeah. But there's no heating or cooling system built into the existing structure as of yet.
That's right. It was built to run electric heat,
Okay,
but that's not what we would be using. The
okay,
wiring is in place for electric heat, but that's not. what-
okay. So this was essentially, it was a project of the building trades. Let's build this thing, get our skills.
And a new instructor came in, and that wasn't his priority.
Okay. I just bring up the concern, which I'm sure anyone would have, which is, would there be any way would the fire department oversee the installation of the heating system? It's just, that's my concern, is
It's just a space heater, right?
That's right.
I think it's just a standalone space heater.
run off a propane tank?
There's a separate propane tank wired in, or the whole, it's just one whole unit?
No, the propane tank would be outside.
Propane tank outside.
Okay. I guess in that case, that my concern would be mitigated by the fact of, I mean, I know that when I did a kitchen remodel, I had to, even because this gas stove was moved 2 feet, I had to have a licensed person come and install the
Gas fitter.
a gas fitter. I just, that, again, it's just, that's an area that raises concern, is placing in a heating unit in a building. Ideally, it will be safe. So, I bring that up. Presumably, you would be using one of the local companies that.
They've already
would-
been.
They've already been.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, they would be running the line from the propane tank to the heater?
And they'd connect to the heat.
Okay. I
And
guess
would that be exhausted, or is that,
Yes, it would be vented outside.
okay, externally vented heater, yeah.
Will the tank be above ground or below ground?
It's above ground.
Okay. So it'll be something, a structure around it to,
You don't have to. I
Oh.
mean, the one I have at my house, it
Oh.
isn't, but it has to be 5 feet away from windows, doors.
okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the board? Are there any members of the public who came to speak about this application? Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, thanks. Bob Tortolani from Brattleboro. Just a couple of comments. One is, I'd like to thank the owner of the Brattleboro Country Club for being so generous as to allow this program to occur. I think it's a very important program, the BOC's ski program, for not only the people in the community, the kids, the cross-country ski teams, and it actually brings people from south of us to spend money in Brattleboro. It's the most southernmost of the ski areas, so it actually has brought people to Brattleboro as a place to stay overnight and to spend some money, which is good. So I think it's wonderful that they have the opportunity to have this building, and I think the benefits of keeping this program going are extremely important. So I hope you weigh those factors in as you make your decision. Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Doctor. Any other comments by members of the public? Further questions by members of the board?
Just one more. Would this be, like I say, open to the public, but wouldn't necessarily have regular hours?
It's open to the public. The hut, however, is open during the week to the school groups, and really the school groups only. The public may use it, but the hut storage area is not.
That's what I'm talking about, just the hut itself.
That's only open on weekends, that public would have access to.
Okay.
And that's dependent on there being snow and.
Well, okay. Fair.
Further questions from members of the board? It's appropriate, I think, for a motion to approve application 2019-92.
So moved?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Mike, have a nice night.
Excuse me, you had mentioned that there's a written.
You'll probably, so we have to draft it, you'll receive it, what do you think, Mike, Brian?
Within
A
2
couple
weeks?
weeks? You'll receive it in a couple weeks. I have to look at the draft and I sign it, and then Brian gets it to you as soon as we've done it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, have a nice night.
Thanks.
The next application is 2019-103 William Hill for Rachel Frieda Hill Trust.
William Hill.
Hello? Okay, so one of my conflicts is walking out the door, that's good.
If all one's conflicts could just walk out the door.
No, that's excellent. Mr. Hill, could you just tell us a little bit about this project?
About 10, 11 years ago or so, I came down to this building.
Thank you.
Met with Byron Stokey, went over, filled out papers about going from a 3-unit to a 4-unit. Took him down there, actually. He needed a ride to get his car at Fletcher Auto Body. He came through it, said no problem, was all set, asked about permit, was all set, and apparently nothing went through.
Okay. Outdoor parking.
Plenty.
Sorry?
Plenty of parking.
Is there, are you able to run a conduit out there? Do you have a new
There's
lot?
outside outlet.
There is?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any arrangements for bike storage?
Do I have any what?
Arrangements for bike storage? Is there a place
They-
people can store
I
their
don't
bike?
think anybody has a bike, but they wanted a bike, they certainly could have one.
Okay. The landscaping, I think I understand that there is basically a big shrub. Is that fair to say? There is a requirement that there be some additional landscaping there. Is there any reason you couldn't add some shrubbery or?
I guess not.
Okay.
Is there a place for, the other suggestion was if you could do some kind of garden or raised bed, that you could plant flowers or something in, perennials, maybe the tenants could garden.
Yeah.
My preference generally is to just say as approved by Brian and let him.
Yeah. I was just
Yeah.
giving him a suggestion.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh,
Gutters?
Yes.
How does the snow get stored in the wintertime?
It's a very big lot, it's a double lot, it just gets plowed back.
Parking remains the same basically even though you're storing snow?
Yes. Parking on both sides of the house.
Where do the gutters discharge?
There's just one gutter over the front door that goes out the back.
And where is the parking sloped?
Parking slope.
Yeah, how does water drain from the parking area? Or does it just go down?
It's pretty flat. It's right up here.
Is it loose gravel? What is
It's
the?
paved.
It's paved?
Yes.
So where does the water eventually sheet?
There's no water issues.
Yeah, but it's gotta go some direction.
The water will always seek its lowest level.
Which direction?
I
If you don't know, that's okay.
It's not a big slope.
Are there areas where you've observed flooding or erosion?
No.
Around there?
No.
Okay.
Ice in the wintertime in the parking lot?
No, it's plowed and sanded.
Do you have some elements of the building designed to save energy?
Yeah, insulated it and put new windows in.
Lighting, stuff like that?
Yeah.
LEDs?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that does it for my questions. Anybody else? I'm going to take that as a no and see if any members of the public are here to speak to this application. Yes, if you could just approach the microphone. Just tell us who you are and where you live, please.
I'm Jackie Reese, and I live in Brattleboro. And I'm assuming this is about Grove Street.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm afraid I was writing notes, so I wasn't really sure, and I didn't know your last name. But I heard 3-family to 4-family. I'm Jackie Reese, and I manage the building next door to yours. I'm here representing Sylvie Blanchett, who is concerned about the boundary of her property, which ends up being only about 2 feet from her house. And on the other side of that is a strip of land that is on the other side of his driveway. And so on this strip of land are a lot of unkempt bushes, locust trees, they're thorny bushes, thorny locust trees, an oak tree, and a couple of maple, which make it very difficult for everybody, including people making oil delivery and her own tenants, to access that side of the house. So Sylvie has been trying to work with Bill on this to get some vegetation that's happening there that would make it easier for everybody to access her basement. Also would make it easier on Bill, because anytime she has roofers or any contractors coming to work on the side of her house, Bill is concerned about liability because they end up being on his property. And so he's insisted that they always produce a certificate of insurance, which is understandable, but it's a headache for him, and it's a headache for Sylvie, trying to get contractors to actually go through this hassle.
Let me just interrupt you for 1 second. I just want to make sure I'm orienting myself to what you're talking about.
Sure.
His driveway is on the side of the property that the person you're speaking for is on, correct?
Yes,
You're talking about 72.
72.
Okay.
Okay, and so the property line is just to the side of that driveway?
There's the driveway, and then there's a strip of land, which is probably maybe 4 feet.
Yeah, I see
It's
that.
not very wide. And then from there to Sylvie's house is about 2 feet. She's got just enough room for a 1-foot pathway.
And so she's got a bulkhead there or something?
No, it's actually a door. There's no, she can't even access the door to go in there. It's not easy. I've done it myself, but every time I have to go over there, I make sure I wear long sleeves.
And the issue is that there's foliage that's intruding onto in your property area?
Thorny. It's unkempt. It's never been, clipped or anything like that, and there's nothing that's ever done to it except what Sylvie does to it. And one of the things that she does to it is she makes sure she gets all of the maple trees that are growing there, because there are a couple of maple trees there, and they're pretty prolific. And then there's an oak tree, which actually the oak tree on that property is perhaps being threatened by her oak tree, which an arborist told her has blight. So she's very concerned that this tree that she's not responsible for can come down on her house if nothing is done for it, to take care of it. And also, she's concerned about getting contractors in, because every time they have to jump through these hoops, she loses, you know how hard it is to get people to work on, I manage a couple of properties. If I had a hard time getting my electrician to come in, having to produce a certificate of insurance, I'd never hear from him.
I don't completely understand the issue. They're driving in on his driveway, that's why they need a
Nope.
certificate of insurance?
I can explain everything.
Okay.
No, they have to put up a ladder. They have to put up a ladder, and there's no way to put up a ladder on that side of the property
It's only 2 feet.
because it's only 2
You
feet.
should understand this, Mr. Valente. Her property is 3 foot from her house, that's the
Yeah.
property line. If somebody's working on the property, and a lot of the contractors don't have insurance in Vermont, they don't get checked, they land on my property, and my insurance company required that, so I don't want to take a chance. Anytime she has...
I get it, I get it now, I didn't
Okay,
understand.
and as far as the bushes, I want to address that too. She came over when she bought the house and asked if she could trim everything down. I told her no. I came in the next day, they were all down. That's...
All right, well, the deal
So
here...
as you hear,
Hold
she
on,
has
hold on,
tried to work with him.
Hold on. The deal here, I mean, this happens from time to time. We get an old-fashioned neighbor dispute. And there's some things that we settle kind of inadvertently because the things that we're supposed to review include the subject in dispute. But sometimes also dispute is there, but it's not really related to the things that we're supposed to be reviewing. And here, what we're supposed to be reviewing really is the increase from 3 to 4 families going to have some sort of adverse impact? But it's not, is Mr. Hill a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 a good neighbor, or 1 on a scale from 1 to 10 a good neighbor? There have to be, you know, we look at, and I'm not suggesting you're good or bad, I'm just saying, we have to look at certain factors involving the site, like is this going to increase dangerous traffic situations? Does it comply with various laws? But I don't think that we have the authority to get into, should we make Mr. Hill deal with this problem of the shrubs on the side of his driveway?
Sylvie's not asking for that, as Bill has said. She's offered to actually take care of that property.
Mm-hmm.
She's also offered to, what she's asking for is to change the boundary line so that,
Just let her say her piece.
Yeah,
please.
no.
to change the boundary line so that strip of land, that it causes Bill concern, you know, because that's where they put their ladders, then just become part of her property, so she can go ahead and take care of it, and she can prevent her foundation from being damaged by the maple trees and all of the other trees. So she's really put into a position where she's both forced to protect her own house, to maintain his property, and also she's running up against resistance from him to do that. So it seems to her and to me, a simple solution would be to just change the boundary line. It's not going to impact Bill's property at all, insofar as his driveway is there, and it's not going to impinge on access to his property at all.
That may be a good solution. It is beyond our jurisdiction to do something like that, though. I mean, frankly, that's something you would have, I think, to go to a civil court judge to do, and even then, it's questionable whether they would have authority to do it. But all we can do is look at the factors that we're supposed to look at when we say, okay, he's going from 3 to 4 units. Does it affect traffic? Does it affect pedestrian safety? Does it have sufficient landscaping? Is it consistent with the character of the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera?
We would take care of some of the landscaping, if that's an issue.
That's a broad interpretation of how
Yeah.
we're supposed to look at that, and I'm trying to be conservative, because the thing is, if we go beyond our scope on one person's application, we've got to do it for everyone, and then all of a sudden we're adjudicating things that really are beyond us. We're volunteers with no real expertise. Some of us just happen to have expertise, but we shouldn't be wading into those things. So I don't want to suggest to you that your problem doesn't have merit, but I want to tell you that we're not qualified to resolve it.
And is there anything short of going to court about it?
I don't know. I don't know. I can tell you there's nothing we can do.
Okay. Is there objection that can be made to changing his whatever you call it, from a 3-family to a 4-family because we're neighbors?
You can certainly object, and you need to tell us what the grounds are for the objection, and if these are the grounds, I have to tell you it's not relevant to the analysis we do. Again, that doesn't mean it's not important, but if you're talking about things that are beyond our jurisdiction, it's irrelevant in a technical sense.
Okay.
That's all.
Sylvie added a bunch of apartments in there. Did she have permits for all that? Because she doesn't
Sarah,
have any
hold on,
parking.
hold on. I'm trying to.
All right.
It's
I hear
all right.
it.
This happens from time to time, but I want to keep us on the business we're supposed to be focused on. And
Mr. Chair.
I don't want to comment on the merits of anybody's situation here, that's all.
Mr. Chair, I would make an observation based on this property chart that presumably was printed from it's some sort of town document, it's included here,
Yeah,
where we can see the outlines of 80 Grove Street and 72 Grove Street. And it's actually interesting, it's very much interesting for me to look at some of the properties on Oak Street and how close the edges of the houses on some of those properties on Oak Street come to boundary lines. And I can see that perhaps that situation that you find yourself in is actually not unique, perhaps, to some of these neighborhoods. And then again, this is where, Mr. Valenti, you said that I would learn stuff being on this board. So I'd ask Brian, the way some of these houses and the property lines are, you know, which are, these are all older houses.
Oh, yeah.
This would not conform with the current zoning regulation. Is that correct?
Some of them might not.
Yeah, okay.
This is why we created setbacks.
Yeah. You understand what
Oh,
we're
I
trying to
do.
say?
I had the same thing in my house, but it's on the side of my house that doesn't have access to the
Yeah.
house, so.
So I could say that perhaps some of us could express sympathy and then also realize it's not, unfortunately, it's not a unique situation for some of these neighborhoods. That was all, that was my observation.
I didn't ask if there's any further comment from the public. I'm assuming the other member of the public's not here to talk about this. Do we have further questions from the board?
yeah, yes. You're changing it into, a four-family, which is now a three?
No, it was 11 years ago. I went down to this building, filled out all the forms, took Mr. Brian Stokely through the town program.
Right.
He looked at it, said, no problem, you're all set. I gave him a ride to Fletcher Auto Body. And then I came down to see Brian.
And just in case she doesn't know what you're talking about, Byron Stuckey ran an affordable, a program designed to increase the amount of apartment units in Brattleboro. He was in low-income housing.
I know Brian's, yeah.
And so there was a program saying, if you can create a new apartment, I think the town kicked in some amount or
Okay.
something like that. That's what,
But they're adding a new apartment, a new family gonna be coming in.
no, he did it.
10 years ago.
He did it 10 years ago, and it's been that way for 10 years.
So what's the,
I assume that either somebody told you you didn't have a permit?
It's up for sale now.
Oh,
And it
okay.
came in, I came down to talk with Brian,
It's
that's how I
clear.
found
In
out.
some manner, he figured out that he'd need one, so he's coming here to cure
a
a
10-year
situation.
mistake?
What's that?
A 10-year-old?
It does happen. I mean,
Yeah.
this is not actually a very rare situation. And I assume it's been rented
Yeah.
for most of the time that it's
Current
existed.
tenants, I don't know how, it was probably 10 or 11 years ago. Brian said the town came through the last time in 2011 for the inspection.
Right.
Had state fire marshals, state fire inspectors, everybody's gone through it.
Right, yeah, the reason I ask that is because we now would have knowledge of whatever traffic it's creating and things like that. Any further questions? I'd suggest we have a motion to approve the application along with a condition requiring landscaping to be approved by the zoning administrator.
So moved.
You got it?
Second.
Second, we'll say that Mr. Annis moved, you seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And please, I don't want any of you to think I'm commenting on the merits of any of this. If we started getting into neighbor disputes, we'd be here until midnight every week, that's all. I'm just trying to keep our scope.
I totally understand.
That's all. So, thank you very much. Have a nice night. Next application is 2019-104, Serenity Smith and William Fortune. Fortune or Fortune?
Fortune.
Fortune.
I'm not,
Close. And, Mr. Fortune, I think you're familiar.
I'm not Bill Fortune.
Oh, you're not Bill Fortune?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, I've never met Bill Fortune.
Um,
One of the reasons I don't think I have a conflict. But is there any reason that they've expressed to you that they're concerned with me chairing this hearing or being involved in it? Okay, please tell us about your project.
I'm Jim Westbrook, and
my wife Elsie and I are the ones that are gonna buy the 17 acres, 17.0 acres from Serenity and Bill.
Okay.
So we came in front of this board in 2017 and went through everything again, got it approved, but before we could ever finalize everything, a divorce started, and it was contested and
Takes a long
threw a
time.
monkey wrench into everything, so the 180 days elapsed. So we're basically back here to say nothing has changed. You know,
Will there be any impact on the use of the whetstone trails?
no,
Are the buildings gonna be oriented for solar?
yes.
Are there any other public uses of that land? Are there trails that are used for horseback or?
Well, the trail that goes down to the whetstone, I mean, there's horses and,
Will what you're doing impair that in any way?
no, no.
That's my questions, right there.
What is the status of the, you have to go through a right-of-way to access this property, correct?
Yeah,
Is there
it's the current right
50 foot
of,
wide or is it 20 foot wide? I
no,
couldn't-
it's 50 foot.
It is
It
50,
is 50,
and
yeah.
it's deeded that way from the,
The Bill and Serenity's house uses that driveway, all right, for the first 100 feet, and it's 50 feet, and then basically where we're gonna go, after you go in 100 feet, it just, ours branches off to the left.
and do you have any, is there any sort of agreement as far as maintenance of that shared portion of the road?
Basically, I do it all. I've been doing it for 10 years.
Would you be comfortable that that be a condition or?
Oh, I don't know, sorry. Yeah.
That's just,
Serenity and Elsie are identical twin sisters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I understand. The condition would just be that there be something written.
That's fine.
yeah,
I
I mean,
think
when
that's-
you,
It's
when
good
you
when
sell
you
it,
sell it, yeah.
somebody's
Sell
gotta take care of it, that's all.
Yeah.
Anything else from members of the board? If there's not, oh, sorry.
No, I remember this from when you were here last time, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was,
pretty
Fine.
pretty elementary.
Yeah,
Okay, so, let's see if we can get a motion to approve application 2019-104 with a condition, providing that the applicant create a written agreement as to the maintenance of the shared portion of the right-of-way.
Thank you.
so moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? I'm just gonna note for the record, or for the people at home, that there are no members of the public here, which is why I didn't ask for public comment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
It's 6, I sat this one out.
Oh, pardon me.
that's fine.
601.
I just recused, I just sat it out.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook.
If that's all right.
And good luck on the second try here.
Thank you.
Okay, so the final application is 2019-101. A mysterious stranger is in our midst.
Is
Ryan
Mr.
Bannon.
Bannon?
Ryan Bannon
If
for
that's his real
Darlene
name.
Jensen.
Actually,
Here, I'll share it with Ryan. Is that okay?
This is one of those math problems.
Okay, so just for the people at home,
I'm confused.
can you do the standard introduction?
Sure, I'm Brian Bannon, the zoning administrator for the town of Brattleboro and the floodplain coordinator.
And just as a procedural matter, someone at home might be saying, why is the zoning administrator here to present an application? Can you just explain that briefly?
Sure. So one of our regulations in the floodplain is a cumulative substantial improvement regulation. When improvements to a home go above 50% of the value over any 3 years, the home has to be brought into full conformance with the flood regulations. And that can mean elevating the structure, it can mean filling a basement, putting in flood vents, relocating utilities. It's a substantial requirement and it's a real burden on property owners. And it also reduces risks, which is the goal. Because it's such a substantial burden and there's such a temptation to maybe cut corners and shade the calculations. When it's between 50 and 60% of the value, a project is reviewed publicly, and in this case by the Development Review Board, as part of our floodplain administration procedures. So in this case, the roof was replaced. It was done without a permit because the property owner and apparently the contractor did not know they were required to get permits for improvements in the flood zone. So when I noticed it, I issued a letter telling them they had to get a permit and they had to supply the cost of the project. They did so, and it turned out the cost of the project was 40% or 40.1% of the value of the structure. There's 2 structures on the property, so the value of each structure was broken out by the assessor's office. And that's about it. So the homeowner provided the final invoice, which represents half of the bill with the breakdown, and she averred that that was one half of the payment made, and that was the basis of the total project cost. And again, the structure value was from the assessor's office. So no decision is required, but comments on whether it seems a reasonable calculation or unreasonable is what's required, and it will be recorded in the minutes. And of course, if you find it's unreasonable, then we'll bring an actual application before the board for consideration.
Can you remind me, you may have just said this, and pardon me if I am kind of asking a redundant question. The value is just the building, or it's the building and the land prorated for the piece under the building?
No, it's structure alone, no land value is included.
So let me understand that. Let's say you had a property in the special flood hazard zone, is that the term?
Yep.
And it was $100,000, and someone was doing improvements to it, and if those improvements, the cost of those improvements exceeded $50,000, they would be required to fulfill all these new requirements of, you mentioned things like flood walls or filling basements and moving utilities.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
We benefit from the National Flood Insurance Program, which allows people to have flood insurance, and that really undergirds the value of people's homes when they're in a flood hazard area. After the last flood, we received over $3 million in flood assistance because we were in that program. That's both private and public. The deal is, if you have a home that's built before those standards were put into place, you have to bring them up to code when you make a really large reinvestment or when they're really badly damaged. So that's the trade-off.
And then just to be clear, you mentioned a calculation of 40.1%?
Yes.
Although the piece of paper I'm looking at says 38.8, is that?
Yep, so it turned out that the original estimate she gave me didn't include the tax, which is one thing that's included, and that bumps it up to 40.1.
Okay. So
They didn't include permit?
Tax.
Tax.
No.
So she made,
is
So-
it tax on services, construction services, or is it simply for materials?
I believe it was for material.
Materials, okay.
So if it's 40.1%, that's under the 50% requirement.
Yep.
So all she had to do is we have to do is say okay for a permit?
You just have to review and make sure that you think my work is credible and reasonable and
Yeah.
accurate.
No.
Yeah,
Just-
I remember
Well, I
when
have
we went
another
through that whole
question.
thing with FEMA after the hurricane. It was a mess.
And again, this is
Yeah.
because, it can be tempting for a flood administrator
Yeah.
to put their finger on the scale and act in a fraudulent way because it will have such a severe impact. So when it gets this close, we do it publicly.
Yeah.
So everybody can see
Yeah.
that it's being done
So,
fairly.
Brian, did you go back and ask if there were other improvements to the property in the time period?
Yeah, I do go through the flood zones on a frequent basis, which is how we capture these projects.
Right.
And we look for containers and other evidence of projects.
Oh, wow, they did a lot.
So, yeah,
So there was, she's test said that there was no other improvements?
yeah. that's
And
right.
it's within what period of time?
3 years.
3.
Yeah, it's a floating 3-year period.
So I'm curious, that's my question about this 3-year. Did the clock start with this $32,000 job that is the equivalent to 40% of the house's value? You understand what I'm saying, is within the next 3 years, if a $10,000 improvement was initiated, that kicks it, as you said, cumulatively over 50%, or I'm ballparking figures.
Yeah, that's somewhat, you know, it's actually the value of the house is going to increase because it has a new roof, so
Okay.
it's a small.
That helps a little bit. But
Yeah, yeah.
The ideal
It's-
situation, though, is that homeowner is now very much aware of these requirements and restrictions, and ideally would be in conformance with them.
Yeah, I would hope all homeowners are aware that they
Yeah.
know elements.
Just from, on this particular house, if I remember correctly, there are things like furnaces and stuff like that need to be 3 feet up off the floodplain area. You have to have masonry in that area as well. You can't have wood siding all the way down to the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you were forced to if you had to retrofit, you would have to make that type of modification.
I guess how far off are we on this particular house? Is that?
One of the structures, I believe, is almost conforming with the flood standards. That's the barn structure, which has a studio in it.
But the one that they're actually doing the work on is
That's
pretty.
less conforming because it has a basement.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first floor, which is the base flood what the elevation is based on, is actually the basement floor.
Okay.
So, I don't think we've ever done this before. Are we moving to ratify your conclusion? What are we doing?
You can make comments that will enter into the minutes if you think my work is unreasonable.
Are we basically just all agreeing that you're not committing fraud here?
If you think I'm committing fraud, yeah.
Think
Yeah,
so, or a
think
mistake.
Are we comfortable entering a notation in the minutes that we conclude that Mr. Bannon's calculation is reasonable?
Yes.
His math is correct.
Math is correct, the investigation is suitably careful, et cetera.
So the motion is that we
I don't-
accept, do we just make a motion that this board accepts this calculation, or
I'm
this
not even-
determination?
I don't think we need a motion because we're not doing anything, and Brian's the clerk, so he's putting this in the minutes. I just want to we can direct him, don't put this in the minutes if it's not an appropriate statement of the consensus of the board. So if it's not an appropriate statement of the consensus of the board, somebody should speak now.
Okay.
If it is, our clerk will resolve that, put it in the minutes.
I just have one clarification. What is the parameters that's in this rules for you to bring it to our attention? Did you say between 15 and 60%?
Between 40 and 60%.
40 and 60, okay.
And of course, you know, once it's over 50, it would be the homeowner who would be most immediately concerned.
Yeah, why is it between 40 and 60, not 40 and 50?
It's the recommendation.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay.
Just, yeah, ballpark.
So in essence, you're gonna
But
give
there's
them a permit and say it's okay to
Questionable
do that?
area, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Does it
it's-
make the sanity check, I imagine?
But I'm
Well, if
also,
it was over 50, it would either be a violation if they didn't
Yeah.
do this, or if you didn't report it as a violation. That seems
Right.
pretty cut and dry that our flood administrator is
I'm just interested
in derogation of duty.
So in fact, if it was more than 50%, it would be an appeal of a determination of substantial damage.
Right.
Functionally.
Like we saw once.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah, we had that.
We
building
dealt with
down by the
the
marina.
solar
Yes.
panel.
can we move to administrative matters? Because I wanted to comment on something earlier, now that we're outside the heat of the application process. And I think, do we have a bylaw change? Or is this just a holdover from last meeting?
On the agenda.
On the agenda, it says amend rules and procedures, I didn't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's a
does?
another mistake.
Okay, so,
That's a leftover from cut and paste.
so I want to be clear, that I'm not trying to scold anybody or anything like this, I'm saying this mostly for the benefit of new members. The comment that cross-country skiing is really great for business and a really great activity, we shouldn't, I'm never gonna interrupt someone and tell them not to say it, but we shouldn't be considering that. If it's legal to be a slaughterhouse, if that's a use, fine, I don't care if you're a vegan. If it's appropriate for it to be a strip club, I don't care if you don't like strip clubs. if the town ordinance says it can be there, and we review the circumstances against the law, and we conclude it should be there, whether it's good for the town, bad for the town, morally appropriate, morally inappropriate, outside of our purview. So I just wanted to mention that. I didn't want to embarrass Dr. Tortolani, who I thought was making a perfectly reasonable point. And, you know, in the select board meeting, that's where they're writing policy, but here we're adjudicating the law.
And to be to make it clear,
No, we can
the
always
key idea is,
vote
does
against
it
it.
conform with the zoning regulations?
Right,
That is the,
right. This was a big issue when we had the homeless shelter application, and people were saying, well,
I know.
it shouldn't be a wet shelter, it should be a dry shelter, and this homeless problem is a big deal. And I was surprised it wasn't a big issue with the dispensary, but, you know, things come before us that may have legitimate public policy disagreements, but we can't get into that. We're a judicial body, not a legislative body.
No, but we can also vote against it. We don't have to express that kind of an opinion if we don't agree with the
Yeah.
application, but because for moral reasons, we don't have to state that, but we can just say, no, I'm not for it.
Not really, I don't
Yay
think
or
so.
nay.
You should conflict out if you really felt that, but you probably shouldn't be voting if you don't think you can evaluate the.
Right, so you evaluate it on whatever, but you can still have the,
Right, but if you
Vote
said,
against it.
let's just say theoretically someone wanted to put in a Mormon graveyard, and you found the Mormon religion was, you know, revolting, you should conflict out of the application rather than
yeah.
then vote against it, but not say, hey, I'm voting against this because I don't find Mormon church, the Mormon faith should be in Brattleboro.
Right.
I mean, that's an extreme.
That's very extreme.
That's a very extreme example to
Yes.
illustrate the general point. The other thing, and I'm not actually sure about this, can we get into a situation where we think a heating setup might be dangerous, but we don't really have evidence related to that? I mean, obviously, health and safety is one of the broad things we look at, but.
Yeah, it's really beyond our competence.
Okay.
You know, it's subject to its own professional licensing and review, and
When it's set
Well,
there,
I
it's
just-
gotta have a permit
Well, I-
and, from the state, because it's commercial.
yeah, that's
And-
right. So every time you make an approval or a permit is issued, it says that they have to contact the state permit specialist. They send it between all the different agencies that might have an interest in land development, including the construction.
is this related to my comments about the structure?
Yeah, I thought our questions were getting a little far afield, and again, this is not a big deal, but I do want to clarify going forward, because the more we get into this stuff, the more potential there is for either appealable issues or spending 30 minutes on something that's.
No, and I want to be clear, the zoning regulations constantly have you ask these boilerplate questions about energy efficiency and what have you. So when I read that application, and they said temporary structure, in one sense, I want to know if it's our purview, that if they were going to put some sort of Quonset hut with zero insulation, and they're going to be pumping a propane heater, isn't that under our purview because of the zoning requirements talk about energy efficiency?
Yes.
So when I heard them say it's pre-built and it's well insulated,
Yeah,
that concern of mine just went out the window.
sure.
And I simply brought up, my concern is, I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Yep.
So I can understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought that up was just the concern about, you know, it was made for one use. Like they said, it's probably wired for electric heat, but they're not actually gonna hook up the electric. And the worst thing
Yeah,
to me, imagine, is a
I-
poorly installed heater.
I didn't think it was an appropriate question
Okay.
even remotely. I'm just, when we fail to stay within our analysis, things like neighbor disputes
Oh,
come
yeah.
up.
Oh,
And it can not only feed the fire of conflict in the public, but it's really easy to get off topic when that happens. It's like a house fire.
And I also think you've been very,
Not with propane.
yeah, but you've been very clear as a chair, and you've had to utilize, or whoever's in the position of the chair has to utilize that that applicant is speaking to this board, and the abutters are speaking to this board, and there's not that,
I didn't do a great job of
Well,
I
you-
tried to. I
I
tried.
have a question.
They were just talking over everybody,
I know,
so.
Would it,
He's
would it
gonna
have,
sell anyway. so-
would it have been inappropriate to mention that, Grove Street there, that the person on 72 would have the right to trim along the property line?
I don't think it's inappropriate to mention that. I do think it would be inappropriate for us to consider that as a factor in
Correct.
whether.
I mean, that's why, I mean, you know.
yeah, my relationship with my neighbor is good enough is that he tells me he's gonna trim that awful pricker bush that I love that goes over his fence. I'm like, cut as much as you want, but.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of beneath the surface of a lot of applications that we have, which is you get neighbors who come and
Here's my chance.
Yeah.
they probably should have realized that this issue existed when they bought the parcel, they didn't. I mean, there was a big clearing by the interstate, and they cleared a bunch of forest that all of the neighbors had enjoyed. And the neighbors came and they said, hey, you can't clear out this great forest, you know, and ultimately, the issue was, well, if you guys liked that forest, you should have bought the property, but
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah,
right,
they did even
but
better
there
for it if you
are
want.
situations where they kind of want us to fix problems that they probably missed or didn't anticipate because they didn't think that their neighbors would be adversarial, and it's like, well, we get into that business, yikes,
Good fences make good neighbors.
right?
So he's gonna sell this property as a
Yeah.
family, right?
No, that's why he came, because he can't sell it without it being
But
updated.
he was under the impression he had gotten
Did he? No, he didn't. He didn't have a permit. He didn't put it in his window. You know that you did that or not.
I don't know, I think I would not judge whether somebody was with good faith.
Oh, and his
I was gonna say, I move we
contractor
adjourn.
did
Yeah, I think we should.
Motion adjourned,
Second?
Yeah.
second, any discussion, hearing none, all those in favor? Any opposed, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
very
I was
impressed
like-
with the